we've got to be very aware of what's coming up down the line. But with this functionality, literally every 6 months, you keeping a lookout of what is coming down the line, what is new, what clients take advantage of, rather than developing something for the sake of it.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Technology Boardroom. I'm joined today by my two colleagues, Kate and Alec, and I'll let them introduce themselves. Kate, do you want to go first?
Yeah, hi everyone. I am Kate Hutchinson. I'm Head of Dynamics here at Advania, and I run a team of consultants implementing, in the main, D365 Business Central, which is a cloud ERP system.
Brilliant, thank you. And Alec?
Hi everyone, my name's Alec. I'm one of the consultants here at Advania, working mainly on Business Central.
Brilliant. And for those that don't know me, I'm Robert Smith, and I'm the Partnerships Director at Advania, which is a very fancy way of saying I make sure that we're working really well with all of our partners and vendors. And unsurprisingly, I'm sure the conversation around Microsoft will come up at some point during this topic. So what we're here to talk about today is all about cloud ERP systems, and I'm very much going to be the idiot in the room on this one. It's not my sort of core area of expertise. So, does one of you sort of just briefly want to explain what is a ERP system and how does a cloud one differ from doing that, say, on premise in a more traditional manner?
Cool. Shall I take that, Alec? Probably should have worked that out before we started. Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk about the cloud ERP. So ERP actually stands for Enterprise Resource Planning, and it's a system in terms of it being, if it's cloud ERP, it runs on a vendor's cloud platform, basically. So they are basically hosting it for you. But ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, basically dealing with everything all the way through from quotes through to cash. So it can include sales, purchasing, manufacturing, servicing, but it deals with that business process all the way through from end to end. So if it's on cloud, like I say, that in it's hosted on a vendor's or a supplier's cloud platform. But if it's on premise, then effectively it's installed on your own hardware, effectively, that you'd be purchasing as well internally.
So it sounds very much then like that this is this more of like a subscription model rather than a own to buy type thing? Is that how these ERP systems work, or do you own what you're buying?
In both cases, it's down to the licensing of them. So with both on-premise and cloud, you do have licensing agreements that could be on monthly or annual commitments. But you've got different one-time costs when you're first setting it up. So whether that's in cloud or on-premise, there's different installation procedures that go with that that will affect the costs.
So I'd be really interested to understand sort of what are the benefits of a cloud ERP system over that more sort of old school traditional on-prem approach, and how do we help people take advantage of them? I guess is the question.
I think if we take the cost that Alec was mentioning there straight away, the initial cost is really low because effectively you can buy one license at minimal cost to get yourself up and running effectively and have access to a whole host of modules in the ERP system, different licenses for different things depending on what software it is that you're using. From a Business Central perspective, there are basic licenses, and then you can introduce different modules for a slightly higher cost, but it's very minimal. And then you're paying monthly costs based on subscription. And over time, if the company is growing, you can scale up the cost if you wanted to. So for example, if you needed additional storage, you'd need to basically pay for that storage because you're storing it in the cloud, in that vendor's cloud. So you can scale it up over time, but it's not a high cost initially. Obviously on an on-prem environment, you're having to purchase a service. So you've got upfront costs effectively. You've probably got something a little bit more time consuming as well, because you've got to install everything that you need as well. on that server. And then obviously over time as well, you've then got to invest in making sure that that server is updated with the latest security updates, or actually it might be that the Windows environment, the system environment, is actually not fit for purpose anymore, and you need to actually purchase something additional to that as well. So the costs can be significantly more over that period of time.
I was going to say the same on that. It's not necessarily the costs of the ERP when it's on premise, but it's the costs of maintaining it and the servers and the personnel along with that to be able to support it.
We should talk a little bit about the updates around that as well, specifically on cloud ERP. So, for example, when we're implementing D365 Business Central for people, there are biannual updates, and they just are part of your subscription effectively, and you're going to get them whether you want them or not effectively, because that's the beauty of it. You're going to get that enriched functionality regardless of whether you're going to use elements of it. But again, if you were on an on-prem environment, you might have a 3, 4, 5 week yearly cycle where effectively you've then got to invest again quite a decent amount of money to upgrade your ERP system, or even implement something completely different to your ERP system. Whereas this is an ongoing functionality enriched system that's getting updated on a 6 monthly cycle effectively, from a D365 Business Central perspective.
And it's one of the things we see as reasons that people are upgrading their ERP in the first place, is that they already have an ERP, but it's very old in comparison to the latest technologies that are out there. So it may well have been on premise because they had to in the past, whereas cloud computing has come along in the major way that it has, and it's now possible to have an ERP that's hosted online instead.
So if I cast my mind back into the depths of time, my first role in the IT industry, if you like, was helping clients implement and use Great Plains, as it was at the time, before we even got into the GP world. And something that you both said there didn't exactly ring an alarm bell, but it was just something I think we should probably talk about. So, Kate, you mentioned that you're going to get these updates every 6 months, whether you like them or not. What if you don't like them? What if you don't want those updates? What if you're very happy with what you've got? What choice do you get in that? Is there any, or do you have to take them all?
Some, I guess it depends on what the functionality is. I mean, depending on, again, look and feel sometimes can change, not significantly, because obviously you don't want to be changing the way that people are moving around and navigating through the system every 6 months. So you don't want that. But I think, certain things might actually feel better if they're moved slightly. So you will still get some of that functionality over time. And it probably can annoy some users, in all honesty, that the button that they thought was going to be on the right-hand side of the page is actually now on the left-hand side of the page. But that's not it's not on a weekly basis. And, you'll be informed, the client would be informed of that sort of thing. But then when it's something a bit more of a major functionality piece, we're introducing something around self-billing this time. There's been a lot of things around deferral templates and things like that some finance users might want to use. It's a choice as to whether you use it or not. It's not inflicted on you. It's a piece of functionality that if you choose to use it and set it up, you can take advantage of it at no extra cost. You're just paying your usual monthly subscription ongoing, and this new functionality will come in line. I mean, Alec, we use something, don't we, that we can log with Microsoft, where we can say different enhancements that we know clients might need over time. And we've seen a lot of those functionality pieces come into the system over the last 2-3 years, where we've gone, brilliant, yeah, we really do need that. And clients will really appreciate the fact that's been added into the system. And like I say, at no extra cost. You've not got to wait for your 4, 5, 6 yearly cycle, like I said before, to get that functionality or have it developed, because you don't want to go through a whole new ERP implementation. It's going to come down the line, and the different suppliers are able to introduce it.
I think adding to that, I think whilst it is true that you may have people that go, we don't want anything to change on our system at all, the majority is the other side of things, where they're looking at the system that's 4 years old and they kind of go, why haven't we had any updates to this yet? And then realize, oh, they have to go through an upgrade process where, speaking specifically about Business Central, it does have the 6-monthly major update with minor updates coming in between those periods as well. One of the nice things about Business Central is it does have a base application and extension kind of framework to it. So each of the updates that you're getting are happening to the base application. So the core product that everybody will have. And if there was functionality that changed and you preferred how it was before, you can build extensions to put your own custom code in to make the ERP work how you want it to. But I think fundamentally the updates are iterative improvements as opposed to ever removing functionality entirely. It's not a case of people can log in and they can't do their job anymore. It's a case of they've got a better tool to use it so it's more efficient.
Okay. No, that all makes sense. And I'm obviously we're should say for the benefit of our listeners, we are predominantly a Microsoft house in terms of our sort of technical capability around ERP. But I'm guessing the principle is the same for every vendor that offers cloud ERP solutions. That they follow this sort of iterative update process rather than the 3-year sort of uninstall and reinstall a new version. It's more sort of iterative updates.
It's no longer a new product each year. Office 365 or Word 2016 as opposed to 2018, things like that. It's a case of you've got a cloud version, software as a service product that, as you say, updates iteratively.
We've actually seen it as well, haven't we, Alec, where we were on a particular project and we didn't see the functionality coming down the line. It wasn't in any kind of roadmap that Microsoft had told us about. But we knew a client needed a specific piece of functionality around exchange rates. And we went ahead and actually developed it as part of the project like we would, and went live with it. And then literally in the next update, they released it and this new functionality was in there. So things are changing all of the time. We've got to be very aware of what's coming up down the line. And sometimes we're surprised by pieces of functionality as well. But it's always better to use standard product than have to have something developed, over the period of time if it's going to do what the client needs it to do. And with this functionality, literally every 6 months, you keeping a lookout of what is coming down the line, what is new, what can clients take advantage of, rather than developing something for the sake of it.
Yeah, and that concept of buy not build goes through a number of cloud services, and I assumed the same would be true for ER.
Absolutely.
There's always, as you say, there's always an exception to that rule. There's always that one real niche bit of functionality that you might need where you will go and build it or code it. But if functionality is available in a base product or as a published add-on, then that's an awful lot of an easier way to go rather than building it yourself.
That's it.
And so continuing that comparison with other sort of cloud services, something that I hear a lot from clients and customers is, what are the security implications of this? Because this is not just a productivity suite. This is not just moving people to use Word in the cloud rather than using it on a laptop. This is fundamentally the core system that a lot of people's business run on, depend on, and are sort of reliant upon. Can we talk a little bit around, are there any security concerns, and if there are, how does Cloud ERP handle those in a different way?
Sure. Again, we're a Microsoft house, so that's the majority of how I'm going to answer. There's already a lot of infrastructure in terms of Microsoft applications across the board with single sign-on and Microsoft Entra ID being the kind of core user management area that's responsible for authentication of all of their products. So what we are seeing with Business Central and all of the rest of the Microsoft products is it's all linking back to there. So we have security groups that are made available, and these are Entra security groups that you would make for lots of different things that can be used to silo users into specific Business Central environments. So to make sure that only certain users are getting access in the first place to the environment as a whole. And then further within Business Central, we've got our own both license restrictions, depending on which license they have, depends on what they can do within the system. And you have your own permission sets that you can apply in there, which are very granular, to the point that I can say they should be able to read this section of data, but they can't modify, insert, delete it, and that we can have exclusions from certain pre-built permission sets already. So Microsoft have got the standard role by role for an accountant, for a warehouse user, and things like that, for what areas of the system they might need. And you can start off with those permission sets and you tweak them so that it works for your specific use case. But very much so, you've got that ability to secure the system in whatever way you want to.
I think as well around, definitely chat in the market around ERP and cloud ERP is around, data concerns and somebody else having, storing that data and systems. So we've definitely had a lot of clients that would prefer to have an on-prem environment so that their team can have full control over their own data and systems, which I guess for some businesses where they've got strict rules to follow around security and, don't want any data breaches and things like that, then that might be important to them. But I think it's also worth saying as well that, there's a lot of security features built into, the cloud ERP offerings effectively. Even from a disaster recovery kind of backup perspective, all that is in place, definitely from a Microsoft perspective, and understanding kind of all the different environments that are securely backed up and can be restored if required and need to be. And also, give a lot of kind of data protection and peace of mind to some of the clients that might not want to go down the cloud ERP route because of not controlling their own data platform effectively. But again, even from an on-prem perspective, like I said before, you've still got to keep up to date with all security updates. Keeping your data, secure on your own servers is a matter for is a full on task, isn't it, to make sure that you've covered from a security angle. So both areas around security and data integrity and making sure that that people have got peace of mind around it have both got probably advantages and disadvantages, in all honesty.
And I think from the people that you tend to speak to for these SMB ERPs, it's a case of if you can get them to understand it in you're already storing SharePoint data in Microsoft Azure platforms, you're already storing other things in cloud systems. It's the same data agreements that you're kind of acknowledging with Microsoft on those ones for SharePoint and OneDrive as it is for the ERP system. You do have visibility over the location, as in the kind of region that data is being stored. So you can change that yourself and select what you want.
And it was always, a conversation around because everybody has these concerns, right? Every client, every customer has concerns around their data, their information. Who is better at securing that information? The client that isn't a security expert, or the cloud vendor that has built a very robust set of services around making sure that this works correctly, and with very, very few exceptions, the cloud vendors tend to do this better than an individual client. Obviously, there'll always be nuance, there'll always be that exception, but generally speaking, the cloud vendor knows what they're doing. They can secure their platform in a way that you probably can't as a sort of end user trying to do it. So it's interesting.
I agree. It's the liability for the end user is large, but the liability for Microsoft, if there's a breach in that data, is even larger. If you think of all of the customers that they're storing, it's not just that one person.
Yeah, and
It's a
as you
very high
say,
level approach, isn't it? Sorry, Rob, it's that very high level approach, though, isn't it? Like, it's my data, I want to know where it is.
Yeah.
Rather than, oh, well, I've given you this data is somewhere else that I'm not in control of, but you're taking on board and you're paying for the maintenance and security and backups and data protection. You're paying somebody else to do that for you, basically, as part of your subscription at quite little cost.
Especially that backup piece is huge,
Yeah.
because when you've got it on premise, backups are one of your biggest problems day by day, to make sure that if anything happened to that server, if it went down at any minute, you would have a copy of the data to go back to. One of the benefits with the cloud ERP is we have specific time that you want to restore back to, so minute by minute restoration of the environment, as opposed to a backup system where you're probably rolling back to the night before. So you've got
I
that benefit.
remember well the days of sort of disk to tape backup and
Exactly.
Yeah. Take it
something's
off
Yeah.
gone
site in
wrong.
case there's a
Yeah,
fire.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thankfully not having to do that anymore, but it's it's as you say, that almost that minute by minute ability to roll back and say, well, there has been a problem or an issue
Yeah.
or something in the last 15 minutes. Well, we can roll back 16 minutes rather than having to go back an entire day to potentially restore that. So
Yeah.
it's a really interesting and often overlooked benefit of all cloud systems, but
Because it rarely happens, but when
very
you need to back up, it's very, very important.
Yeah. And if you go back to the cost piece again, if you think about it, just, as I mentioned before, it is low cost for getting all of that. Think about what you've got to do on an on-prem environment to make sure you're doing all of those things in terms of backing up and updating that software and where it is and who's looking after it and all of those things as well. It's part of the subscription.
and the who in that equation is important as well, because particularly unless you're a very large organization, that probably comes down to you've got a single point of failure with a single person whose job it is to go and do that.
Yep.
And if and best will in the world, nobody's going to get that right 100% of the time. So by moving that responsibility and that risk into the cloud vendor's hands, you get that scale of their capability in terms of securing and restoring and
That's
whatever
right.
you need to around your data. So
As well as paying
really
that
good.
person as well, you're probably paying somebody else to
A
support that
backup
backup
provider.
as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
absolutely.
was thinking the same. You've got extra hardware, you've got an extra third party that you're speaking to, making sure that things are getting backed up. You've got extra support agreements, all of the rest of it.
So I want to come back to the point of cost in a moment, but just before we do, and this might be one of the stupid questions that I promised I'd ask. So if you're using a cloud ERP system, do you need to be connected to the internet?
Yes.
Yes, you do.
So,
Yes, you do.
I'm remembering my days working for some large, or working sort of for and on behalf of some large manufacturers, and sometimes they had intermittent, shall we say, connection to the internet. It didn't always work how it should.
Yeah.
What happens in that situation if you're using a cloud ERP system?
With a cloud ERP, that would cause you some issues. Is the simplest way of putting it. You do rely on an internet connection to have access to the service. There are some third-party products that mainly focus on warehousing, where internet access might be a little bit more difficult to get to.
That's what I'm thinking, exactly that scenario.
In those scenarios, it will send data to devices where it will cache that data on the device so that they can complete whatever operation they need to. Let's say they're doing some pick notes, so they're going around the warehouse selecting some goods off the shelves. It may be they don't have internet connection there. So they can complete it on the device, but then they will submit that report when they do have internet access so that it updates the live system after.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But going on internet as a topic, one of the main problems or differences between on-premise and cloud is the accessibility of it when you're not on site yourself. So if you are working remotely, or if you're just in the field as your day-to-day role, with a cloud ERP, you can log in from a laptop, a phone, a tablet, any internet accessible device. Whereas previously you had to rely on VPN connections before you would be able to get access to that data. And with all the will in the world, VPN systems aren't the most user friendly. They break regularly in
Very,
comparison to
very
everything else.
diplomatic way of putting
That's a
it.
nice way of putting it. I don't want to say there's going to be people out there who go, my VPN works great, but they don't always, and they're definitely not as easy to do from a mobile device.
No, definitely not.
Naturally from it than from booting up a computer. So you gain a lot from portability by having that cloud ERP. So I can literally log on at any time and have a look at my accounts.
Yeah,
whether you want to or not, because we always say that you could do it on a beach as well if you want, Rob, but many people choose not to.
You shouldn't. No, just enjoy the beach. That'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, because one of the questions I had in my mind was, how does a cloud ERP system make it easier for people to access that data when they're remote? And it sounds like it's a bit of a mixed bag, that if you've got connection to the internet, the answer is absolutely yes, but if you haven't, probably less so. But I'm guessing that's any connection to the internet. As you say, it doesn't need to go down a VPN tunnel. If you've got 5G on your mobile and you can tether, and you can access the data.
And again, that comes back to it's using Microsoft authentication to make sure it's a secure access to that platform. So you don't need to worry about the VPN aspect to authenticate you.
I guess one of the things that we saw as COVID hit was that people who had already invested in a cloud solution at that time were winning, because effectively the next day they had a laptop working from home or an iPad or whatever it was, and they were connected to their cloud ERP system. And obviously if people were just office based, generally they'd be going into work from a PC effectively. So, even that, then being able to work from home or accessing that on-prem ERP solution was needed some work to be able to do that, some equipment, some way of being able to access it via a VPN connection, which again was not always reliable for certain people. So from a cloud ERP perspective, then people who'd already taken the plunge at that time were winning.
I think in general in IT industry, the requirement for internet is becoming almost a necessity for all things.
It's an essential utility now.
Phone calls now, the majority, they're going through the internet line. So if you don't have internet, other things are also going wrong in your day-to-day.
So, and I did say I wanted to come back to the subject of cost, because it is important. And there's a bit of a tangential question to that as well. So, Kate, you spoke around the difference between that sort of OPEX, CAPEX spend compared to the traditional model. So you've not necessarily got a huge outlay at the start. It's more of an ongoing or per user almost subscription cost.
That's right.
Something that raises its head every now and then in discussions around other cloud services is this idea of and concept of vendor lock-in, and the idea that, well, actually, if you commit to this and you're now on this ongoing subscription model, well, you're stuck there. Well, even if you wanted to move, you probably can't. And can we just talk a little bit about whether is that true? Is there an element of that is true, or is that a bit of a misconception?
I mean, it's an interesting concept, that one, isn't it? Because, a lot of the reason why you would probably go to a cloud ERP is because you're not going to go through another upgrade process, as we would call it, specifically in ERP, in another 4 or 5 years' time, where you've got a decent outlay of cost for consultancy services to implement, to go through scoping, configuration, training, helping through UAT, and also, into go live handholding. So you're not going to be doing that potentially in 5-6 years' time, unless you don't actually like the ERP system that you've chosen to use, and you want to change an ERP system, in which case you'd still have to then go through that process to implement it appropriately for the business. I mean, but again, the ease of being able to do that with the functionality that you've got, if you've gone through that process before, then you could do that, but you're more likely to come to a biz apps teams like ourselves to ask us to, assist with that process and have consultancy on getting you to that stage. So you've got that outlay again of that consultancy piece. I think there's a bit of chat, isn't there, around the fact that obviously, yes, you've got that initial outlay from an on-prem perspective because you're buying servers, and you've still got that outlay of consultancy cost to implement it for you, and then you're paying license costs. Now, over time, from a cloud ERP perspective, you're going to be paying that subscription piece over time, but also a lot of our clients are investing in improvement rather than another re-implementation. It's about, I want to integrate to this new third party now, or I want to have this workflow in place, or use Power Platform to have a flow that's going to make my life easier around approvals or something of that ilk, which rather than having that outlay on having to do a new ERP system again in 4 or 5 years time, you can spend that money over a period of time, IT budget, on improvements to the existing ERP to make it additionally efficient, ongoing, basically.
I think my view with the vendor lock-in side of things, which for an ERP system, it's which ecosystem do you want to lock into, if we're using the word lock, and I will to begin with. I think there are vendors out there where ERP is their core product, and that's their main offering. So they have an incentive to lock you in more so than another vendor like Microsoft that has lots to offer you when you're in their ecosystem. So I believe there's less, we see a lot less of kind of minimizing implementation costs and then hiking prices of licenses after that you might see in other vendors.
Sure.
Whereas it's very steady across Microsoft, across the board. And yes, licenses do have price increases over time, but it's much more in line with the industry, as opposed to, now we've got you, we're going to make sure you stay here and get money out of you. When we say vendor lock, I almost think it's a voluntary lock-in a lot of the time. You are choosing a product that you think that you want to use over a long period of time. These cloud ERPs aren't changed every year. You are at least going to have it 5 years, probably 10 years. So when you're going to market and going, which provider or vendor can I trust to support me for that amount of time, you're buying into it yourself. Obviously, if you do get into there and realize we don't like this product, this isn't the support that we're liking, then some vendors are harder to move from than others. But I think fundamentally, as what Kate said, is that upfront cost. Whenever you want to change, that's what's locking you in. You've got a cost there that you would have to go through rescoping, reconfiguration of a new system, and data migration to move everything over.
I think as well,
and you would have to do that whenever.
I think as well, from our experience, Alec, as well, when we're speaking to clients, it's the relief that they're going into cloud ERP. So they know that they've not got that big upgrade piece to go through, because it's hard work, in all honesty, implementing an ERP system. So if they know they can go into something that they're wholly bought into, and it's implemented in the correct way, and they've got the correct support around it, and then they know that they can invest in that system to improve it over a period of time and integrate it to lots of different other well-known third parties or additional pieces of software, then that gives them peace of mind that I'm not going to have to go through this whole upgrade process again. Never say never. There are changes in business needs and reasons why people might want to do that. But definitely, I think our clients go into it with that view of, thank goodness for this. Once we've got over this, I'm going to be able to just make improvements and make things efficient ongoing. And clients come back to us, sometimes on a monthly basis for different things that they might need, taking advantage of, Microsoft Stack to be able to add in additional functionality that the business needs, but will improve their business processes, internal processes.
And that interoperability piece with the rest of a vendor's technology stack is it's super important, right? And it's
absolutely.
We've had a number of other episodes where we've talked around the elephant in the room that is AI, and we've managed to get this far through the conversation without mentioning it, but we have to talk about it at some point. So where does AI come in to the future of cloud ERP. And to sort of put a bit more context around that question, I read a really interesting article last week that basically said CRM and ERP is dead. AI will do everything for you in the future, and because the premise being that nobody likes using an ERP system. Nobody, that's not what people choose to do. It's something that's necessary and integral, but it's not necessarily the thing that it's not where people would choose to spend their time if they didn't have to. And I just wondered how you see the future of ERP with a bit of a sort of an AI spin on it. How is that going to change the landscape at all, or where are we going to be in a couple of years' time with this thing?
Do you want to take that, Alex,
Shall I
initially?
take that on? Yeah, I like that question.
I thought you might.
I'm a fan of generative AI and everything that's going on with that, so I could take that one. Again, we are going to benefit massively from being Microsoft focused. So what we're seeing already is Microsoft's push with Copilot throughout all of the different Microsoft products, and Business Central is no different to that. So the way we're seeing it being used are efficiency gains, automation of processes that have to be completed regularly. So one of the very first things that came in, it's a very small one, was marketing text for items that you had in your system. There is a relationship going on at the moment between Shopify and Business Central that's quite integral, and effectively, you can use Copilot to generate all of the marketing text that's needed to then display your product on your website with a click of a button. It will do it for you. So it will take all of the attributes off of the item, make some text for you, and that will get moved over to Shopify and it will appear on your website. Rather than what probably would have been a 3-4 step process for you before, as well as you having to come up with the text yourself.
And so we're seeing, just to be clear, is that a benefit of the Microsoft joined up ecosystem, or is that something that any cloud ERP vendor either has or will have over the coming sort of few months, years, whatever?
I believe that it will come to all cloud ERPs eventually, that sort of functionality. Microsoft have a jump at the moment from their investments with OpenAI, and that's what it's built off of. So they're making the most of having GPT's access, and they're baking that in. So what we will see, I believe, is that AI will be able to automate a lot of the processes that have to happen. I don't believe that it will remove people from logging in and having to action things on their ERP system entirely, but I think it will potentially reduce the amount of clicks that they're doing. A lot of the process flows will get automated, so they don't have to do all of the steps that they currently have to. But it will mean that there's less time needed spent inside the ERP, which might make them happy to know that. But there'll still be some human intervention and monitoring of it.
As Alec talks about that as well, I think about all the different setup options that we've got around item cards and stock related things and manufacturing processes and things like that that are in ERP. And for AI to make certain decisions and create reports for detailed analysis and tell us, maybe the user what decisions they should make based on that data, we've still got to be able to set that information up appropriately. And because I know how many settings there possibly are around that area, that's relatively complex to start with, to make the ERP system tell you the right answer effectively. So there's still a bit of a way to go. And I think the other thing that we've talked about, Alec, before around AI and using Copilot and the different tools that we've got at our disposal now, which are all brilliant, is around, we do a lot of work on data import at the moment, so we can use Copilot to help us cleanse that data, to straighten out that data, whereas we might have been doing that manually, or users might have been doing that manually for us. Clients might have been having to spend hours doing that data, whereas there's an element of AI we can use basically to cleanse that data and get it in the right format for us. At the moment, we are then using Microsoft tools inside ERP to import that data in manually and watching it tick over, I expect that elements of that will improve. From time to time. We're still importing effectively a spreadsheet at the moment, right, Alec? And that's as it's onerous around data and doing elements of that. So I expect that some of that actually will improve. So not around ERP decision making and things like that, but actually practical setup config tasks that we need to do. I expect AI to help us with that, make us more efficient at doing that ongoing.
And one of the things that we're seeing at the moment is two things actually. So firstly is for the help documents and documentation that we've got at the moment, there is a vast amount of documentation to explain what is happening on each page within this ERP system. And it's really good, it's really informative, but it's not necessarily the easiest to instantly find the right documentation page. And we're seeing with Copilot that it's able to do that now. So we've got a chat with Copilot kind of panel that will appear on the ERP. So it's the same as your ChatGPT, any of your kind of conversations with a bot. And you can ask it specifically, what is this field talking about? And it will give you the answer, take you to the link to the documentation that's relevant. You can ask it questions about your data itself to say which customer has the highest amount of invoices this month, and it will be able to find your data and show you that without you having to go look yourself. So key insights are a lot quicker, just because AI will go and find that data for you.
And that's it's one of the benefits we see in all other sort of system implementations of AI, right? It's fundamentally not letting you necessarily do anything that you couldn't already do. It's just taking away the pain and the hassle and the needing to know where a particular setting or bit of information is. You can use the AI tool to tell it what you need to do using very simple, natural user language, and it goes and figures out the rest of it for you. But you could theoretically have just done that yourself, but it just
it's making it quicker, isn't it? Yeah, it's making it quicker, because I think the good example of it is that, a lot of clients might want to know, tell me all the stock items that are below my safety stock level that I need to order in the next week. Whereas I would be filtering this and filtering that and changing things around. Yeah, exactly. Whereas you can ask Copilot to give you that information and it will produce it for you. So, really, really good stuff that's, available to us to utilize and will improve ongoing.
Yeah. And it's as I say, we'd have been remiss not to talk about it, because it is that elephant in the room for a lot of people. And I've seen some and read some very interesting articles that have some really far-reaching concepts and ideas of what AI is going to do, particularly to the CRM ERP space. So I just wanted to get both your views on that, and that was really, really helpful. So I think we're coming towards the end of our time now. Thank you both for a really interesting conversation and a lovely chat around this subject. I'm sure there are areas that we need and want to dive into in a little bit more detail in some future episodes. But thank you both again for your time today. Thank you to all our listeners for listening, and we'll see you all again very, very soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.